In the world of finance, certain names stand out for their extraordinary achievements and lasting impact. This is especially true when you take a stroll down Wall Street and see people at the New York Stock Exchange trying to battle and defeat the market in the hopes of creating riches for themselves. Nowadays it is mostly giant investment firms with tremendous amount of capital who are trying to outperform the market, either for themselves or their investors. But there was a time where it was the common man who opened the doors to the stock exchange and entered the arena that is the trading floor, with the goal of creating a better life for themselves and their family. But buying stocks in companies is not the only way of trading when it comes to finance. There's also the ever so fickle commodities market, and it is here that we find a single farmer boy who tried his luck and ended up making his millions that in the end netted him enough money to buy one of the biggest baseball teams in the world, and at the same time created innovative strategies that reshaped the landscape of commodity trading. That boy was John W. Henry. Born in Quincy, Illinois in 1949, John's journey to success is nothing short of inspiring. Born into a family of soybean farmers and with a keen interest for mathematics, John was almost destined to use this background and talent to create something of himself. He would, however, not journey into trading for some time though, as his family would first move to California when John was only 15 due to him developing problems with his breathing due to being diagnosed with asthma. It was here he graduated from Victor Valley High School and went on to attend various colleges where he chose to study philosophy. However, he didn't actually manage to graduate from any of them due to his time touring with 2 different rock bands as a guitarist, which was a turn I assume you did not see coming. And neither did I when I first researched this video. And when asked by Bloomberg in 2009 about this particular part of his life and why he prioritized his music career instead of his studies, he said here, and I quote, "I just really wanted an adoring audience of women screaming my name." End quote. He did, however, do other things than just spend his time living the dream of any male 20-something-year-old in the 1960s, as he found a way to put his mathematical genius into something useful. While some may disagree on his desired method, it turns out that John was a frequent goer to various casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, where he would clean out the blackjack tables by counting cards. This of course would turn out not to be a viable career path, as he ended up being banned from every single casino on the Strip. Another thing about John was that he was not stingy with sharing this ability of his, as he would later on, when attending one of the various colleges, UCLA, publish an article in the school's newspaper essentially teaching students how to count cards so everyone could try their luck at seeing how long it would take them to get banned from various casinos. I guess you can say that John was the inventor of the world's first real-life organized speedrun, and he really wanted to see if anyone could beat his record. However, in time John had to grow up and become a man who takes responsibility, and sadly this happened in the form of the death of his father in the early 1970s, where John was left with the soy farm business. But rather than taking up the mantle and becoming a soybean farmer himself like his father, John had other plans. As mentioned, he was rather good with numbers, and it turned out he was good at predicting market prices too, and it was at this point where he became a trader on the commodities market. John took his talents to the commodity trading hubs, which were notoriously known as places that dealt more in gambling than real investing. However, John did not strike out here, and by 1981 he was winning more than losing, to the point where he founded his own investment company, John W. Henry & Company, or JWH for short, in Irvine, California, and immediately began marketing himself towards the biggest commodity brokerage firms in the US, which in the end proved to be a success. Now, it is clear that John had success with his strategy, but what was John's exact strategy? Well, John followed the strategy commonly known as quote-unquote trend following, which essentially is watching what the market does and follow that trend. To paint a picture, it would be the equivalent of if one person at a stadium starts clapping, the rest will follow. Now, if you're hearing this term for the first time, it may just come off as someone who's trying to predict where the highest highs and lowest lows are located. And you wouldn't be incorrect in assuming that, as this is a part of it. But John used more than just this piece of information. He also analyzed and conducted several tests by observing past market data to ensure that his methods actually did work. And he did this through the help of his genius mathematical skills. He believed that by removing the element of the discretionary human judgment, you could consistently create profits, which in turn translates to, if you eliminate human emotion from your equations and trust the numbers, you are guaranteed to become filthy rich. But did it actually work? Well, the main portfolio that John managed was called the Financials and Metals portfolio that he created in 1984 and ran until 2006. And the results in that time span are crazy, to say the least. If you had invested $1,000 in the fund at the start, that amount would have skyrocketed to $129,100. And accounting for inflation, that is a cool $201K. This meant that his fund, on average, created a return of 25% year over year. And to put that into perspective, let me just remind you that an 8 to 10% return on the S&P 500 is considered a good return on investment. And a little side note here, John would have his best year only 3 years after the portfolio went live in 1987, where the fund would have an almost absurd return of 252%, with 105% of that being made in the last 3 months alone. John mentioned that after his fund had had this completely crazy year, he was tempted to retire, but stayed in the market. As to why he did this, I don't really know, and I don't think anybody knows. I mean, I really think that most people would just have called it quits at that point. But I guess there's always room for one more spin. When the portfolio was closed down, John would at the end of 2006 have amassed a net worth of $1.1 billion. He would later on elaborate when asked what the key elements were to his success, and he would list the following. 1. Realizing that there is no holy grail to trading. 2. Discipline is more important than genius. 3. Persistence is more important than talent. 4. Performance is more important than capability. 5. Ability to create value is more important than creativity. And 6. You must constantly look for ways to create value. Now, while I personally find these 6 points rather vague and could really be applied to most things and probably anything, I do still believe that they serve a purpose, if only to just create a mindset for success. And I mean, John is certainly proof of that. Hard teenage rock and roller, notorious card counter, and while making his millions, John also held a love for sports, and especially owning teams. His first foray into the world of professional sports would happen in the form of the minor league baseball team, the Tucson Toros, all the way back in 1989, as well as being co-owner of the West Palm Beach Tropics team, which were managed by Dick Williams, former manager of the Boston Red Sox 1967 team, known as the Possible Dream Team. They got that name due to the fact that the Boston Red Sox had not won a league title in decades, and they finally did under Dick Williams. It is also worth to mention that the Tropics team I mentioned before went out of business the following year after John acquired them, just after they won the 1989-1990 season. This did not deter John though, as he would delve into numerous deals involving the Orlando Magic, the Colorado Rockies, attempts to acquire an NHL expansion team in Florida, which failed, the Miami Heat, the Florida Marlins, and at the time the New Jersey Nets. One of the more ironic deals that he actually made was to buy a part of the New York Yankees back in 1991. But finally, in 2001, he made his most famous deal yet. Alongside television producer Tom Werner, the New York Times, and other investors, they founded what would be known as the New England Sports Ventures, or NESV for short, to bid on ownership of the Boston Red Sox. And they won. With John now as principal owner and Werner as chairman, they led the Red Sox into the 2002 baseball season, which they ultimately lost. So, where is John now, you may ask? I mean, is he even still trading? Well, the answer to that is no. John closed his trading firm back in 2012 after their assets under management went from $2.5 billion to a merely $150 million due to various reasons. But I mean, to be fair, when you look at what John achieved during his time trading, it is nothing more than astonishing. And I think we can all agree that he really has nothing left to prove to anyone. Currently, John is spending his retirement managing the Red Sox and also managing the European football club Liverpool FC after his sports company took over the club in 2010. And it seems that today his heart is in managing sports teams. And his company has made numerous deals to acquire different teams and different sports over the years. And if that wasn't proof enough of his love of managing sports teams, it is also my understanding that in his free time he really enjoys playing the baseball managing simulation game Out of the Park Baseball. I mean, say what you want about him, but he is really spending his remaining years doing what he loves the most, in every sense of the word. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.